I recently watched a Secular Talk video where the host was asked whether he thinks there should be mandatory voting. I think he misses the mark quite a bit with his answer, but let's see what he has to say.
I'm forever 50-50 on this. So, on the one hand, we already require people to do some shit that they view as annoying and they don't want to do, and I understand that feeling. Jury duty. So they say, look. I don't care if you don't want to do it or you don't like it. You're a citizen of the United States of America. You have some duties, you have some responsibility along with that. You have rights as a citizen, or at least on paper you do, in the Constitution. The government has done a good job of trampling all over those. But you have to do some shit. So you get called in for jury duty, bitch, you go to jury duty. That's not a choice.
He's absolutely right that if you're called in for jury duty, it's mandatory. However, I disagree that this is a good justification for forcing people to do other, quote, duties. But let's hear more of what Kyle has to say.
So we have that's compulsory. Well, why is it we just skipped right over the most important thing? Like, the first thing one would think it is reasonable to be compulsory is, you live in a democracy. You will participate in that democracy. So if you're going to have anything that's compulsory, that should be number one on the list.
Why is it reasonable to compel someone to do either of those two things? I mean, I suppose you can make an argument for why someone should have to serve jury duty and or vote, but in a country that supposedly prides itself on freedom, you'd think that they would allow for the freedom not to vote. But he has more to say. I cut out the next bit because I didn't feel it was pertinent to the question of whether people should be forced to vote. He basically says that if American citizens were forced to vote, the liberals would be much more likely to win because the country as a whole leans left. He thinks this might be a good thing for the country. But that's a whole other discussion for another video, perhaps. But if you want to watch the entire video, I'll leave the link in the description box below.
But I do think that the net effects for the country would be positive if you had compulsory voting. And it's not a crazy idea. Many modern nations do have compulsory voting. And we have one of the lowest, if not the lowest, turnouts among modern nations for our elections, which is abysmal for a country that loves to preach about how we're the beacon of freedom and democracy.
Being the beacon of freedom means that sometimes people won't do what you want them to do, including vote. Instead of making it mandatory to vote, maybe the system has to be reviewed and updated. Perhaps people aren't voting because they aren't excited about the system or the corporate stooges that the system is producing.
So, it's a difficult question. It's a good question. I'm still not 100% solid on my answer. I'm very curious what you guys, the audience, thinks.
All right, Kyle, here's what I think. I think you're taking a process that you admit most people don't like. Instead of advocating for getting rid of that anti-freedom process, you're essentially saying that the government should create more of those positions because, well, freedom and democracy, don't you know? Now, to be fair to Kyle, he does say that he's unsure, and depending on his mood, he might give different answers to the same question. But I don't understand his argument from a freedom perspective, especially since you could likely fix the jury system by implementing paid jury duty on a voluntary basis. Also, jury duty and voting are different in nature. You can go decades without ever being called for jury duty, but elections happen much more frequently than that. You also have to consider that in a court of law, the jury is forced to sit there and listen to evidence, but in an election, you don't have to do your due diligence and can just vote according to your perceived political leanings or by what name sounds the nicest. But I still think the strongest argument against forced elections or jury duty is that it's anti-freedom. This might sound harsh, but forced jury duty is a form of state-imposed forced labor. And as you can see with this clip from Secular Talk, it is often used to justify other forms of forced, democracy. So no, I don't think people should be forced to vote in elections. I think encouraging people to take more of an interest in politics and to become more active in the process is a much better option, and it doesn't infringe on freedom. But that's just me. What do you think? Should people be forced to vote in elections? Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Take care, and cheers!